So now we start to discuss the part of yogurt processing. Actually, we know the background already. We look at this white network. This actually belong coagulated casein micelle. This is Lactobacillus bulgaricus, and this is Streptococcus thermophilus. The two thermophilic lactic acid bacteria, which are used in fermentation. When they grow, they produce acid, they reduce pH, they cause coagulation of casein. When casein micelle coagulate, they form a three-dimensional gel network like this, and then you see they form space. These space are actually contain whey. Whey means a lot of water together with soluble component, including whey protein, the protein which are soluble, lactose, a number of soluble mineral, and then NPN, non-protein nitrogen compounds, which are soluble, some vitamin which are soluble in water, and so on. It's a number of components like that. The way. So in making yogurt, you will be successful if you have a good network of casein that hold the whey inside well. Okay. If the whey is not hold, is not bound very well inside, it will release out, and normally you obtain a layer of liquid on the surface, and then that is called whey off. The term is whey off, or the other term we just saw it, syneresis. Syneresis or whey off is the case when the whey inside is not hold well inside, it is released out. So the definition: yogurt is a fermented milk obtained by a simultaneous operation of two lactic acid bacteria, Lactobacillus bulgaricus and Streptococcus thermophilus, in which the two specific cultures are still active, are still alive at the time of consumption. Means that in yogurt, these bacteria are still survived at the time that we eat product. When we eat yogurt, we intake quite a high number of bacteria, and of course these bacteria are good, right? And then in making yogurt, thermotreatment after fermentation is not allowed, because if you do thermotreatment after fermentation, you will kill these good bacteria. So in order to call your product yogurt, you should not do heat treatment after fermentation. If you do, then you have to name it somehow different, not only simply yogurt. Okay. There are other regulations as well. The dry matter content on fat-free products should be at least 8.2%. For full-fat yogurts, then it contain minimum 3% fat, and half skim yogurt in between 1 to 3%. Skim yogurt should have less than 1% fat. Okay, the dry matter, not counting the fat, should be minimum 8.2% to be called yogurt. This is according to the regulation of in the world, other country, but in Vietnam it's somehow, I don't know if they have regulation, but if you look at the market, a number of the product have quite low dry matter, quite low. They dilute the milk a lot, or they use little powder dissolved in a lot of water, so the dry matter is very low compared to this. Then they can sell with a very competitive price, low price, but then the quality or the amount of nutrients then quite low actually. You go to the market, you look at the label, and then you will see A number of small company, large company, well-known company, dry matter content is quite low, especially the frozen yogurts. Some company they sell, they even have only like less half, like half of this. They even add 50% of yogurt, 50% of water, and then before they freeze it. Okay, this one I already explained, so we just skip it. We go further. Now we have the question why we make yogurt. Yogurt or making yogurt is a simple way to preserve milk. Not simple but also cheap and safe. Simple, cheap, safe way to preserve milk, mean to extend the shelf life. So for example, when we use heat to pasteurize milk, then we can keep this pasteurized milk in the fridge and the shelf life is 7 days. But if we ferment this into yogurt, then the shelf life now become 45 days. The same storage in a fridge. Store in a fridge. By just fermentation, you can prolong the shelf life to many times. The question is why we already discussed in the functions of starter coaters. We make yogurt, we lower the pH a lot. The lactic acid bacteria also produce a number of like hydrogen peroxide, bacteriocin, and so on. Some other organic acids which may also prevent the growth of microorganisms and then prolong the cell life to a much higher extent. Why we can prolong? Here we already explained is low pH, undissociated organic acid like lactic acid, acetic acid. These organic acids are actually antimicrobial. Okay. Hydrogen peroxide, low redox potential because during fermentation, then we consume the oxygen. Okay, yogurt have a low pH value. It inhibits growth of many bacteria. However, the yeast can grow because yeast can grow at low pH. The mold can grow in case we have oxygen. We have a lot of oxygen, the mold can also. So during making of yogurt, we have this step, pasteurization of milk before fermentation, just to kill a major part of this to prolong the cell life. In terms of nutritional aspects, what would be good about yogurt in comparison with fresh milk? When we convert fresh milk or raw milk into yogurts, there would be some changes in composition. The lactose content is reduced. Somehow 20% of lactose will be fermented into lactic acid. The vitamins, depending on what kind of vitamins, some will increase, the other will decrease. Some decrease because the lactic acid bacteria use them. The other one will increase because lactic acid bacteria have a capacity to produce some vitamins, like vitamin B, for example. Okay, edible energy is just similar. From raw milk into yogurts, there would not be a lot of change in total energy. Digestibility is improved because we already studied one of the functions of starter coater is to hydrolyze protein and hydrolyze lipids. When we do fermentation, part of this hydrolyze even is not at a high extent but somehow hydrolyze means that when we intake into our tract, then the digestion is improved because part is already hydrolyzed. pH adjustment, of course the pH will lower compared from raw milk to yogurt, and yogurt would have some antimicrobial action we already discussed because of the low pH, because of the H2O2, because of the bacteriocin and so on, because of the organic acid, and all these factors will prevent the growth of certain microorganisms, certain bacteria. Right. So when we eat yogurt, if we eat one yogurt a day, then we have lower incidence of getting infection of the tract, diarrhea and so on. So if you eat one day, one yogurt, actually you maintain very well the health of the gut. And then Making yogurt can improve the absorption of minerals, especially we can improve the absorption of calcium. We already know that milk is a rich source of calcium, but a major part of calcium in milk is in not soluble form in calcium phosphate rich in the casein micelle. So the casein is inside the micelle. It's not soluble, so it's difficult for digestion and for absorption when we take the milk. However, if we make into yogurt, because we lower the pH, we already discussed in chapter 6 that we lower the pH, we have more dissolved calcium, calcium 2 plus, right? And then we have lactic acid. Calcium with lactate react together, become calcium lactate. This is a salt, and this is a form of calcium that can be absorbed much better than the non-soluble form from the beginning milk. So when we make yogurt, the calcium become better for absorption. And then, of course, when we make yogurts, we can also integrate or supplement with some probiotic bacteria, good bacteria. Then when we eat yogurt, with already good lactobacillus and streptococcus, but now we have some other added probiotic as well. So somehow also a positive point for the products. Now we go to the next part to discuss the production or the processing of yogurt. And the first several steps we call them pre-treatments. Pre-treatments of the milk to be ready for fermentation. Okay, from milk we start with standardization. In chapter 6, we know that standardization is to standardize the fat content. In making yogurt, standardization là chuẩn hóa đó, is also to standardize dry matter content, fat-free dry matter content. We don't need to count the fat here. Total dry matter content, especially casein. Why casein? Because casein is the main component that make the structure, the body of yogurt. Casein coagulate and form the three-dimensional gel network. So we need to have more casein to have better texture. To increase the casein, of course, then you need to increase the dry matter of milk. How to do it? We can do by evaporation. By thermal evaporation, we remove part of the water from milk, means that we already increase the dry matter content. Or the other way to do, which is simpler, is just to add with milk powder or milk concentrate into fresh milk. We add them, increase the dry matter content. Again, when we increase the dry matter content, means that we increase the casein, means that we have better body, we have better texture, firmer structure, which is called firmer. Okay, the next step is deaeration. Deaeration is to remove the air in the milk. Milk inside the udder is free of air, but then after collecting from the cow, after some like transportation, pumping, and so on, then air will be dissolved in the milk. So we have some percentage of air in the milk, and this is not good in making yogurt. So we have to remove it. Why? We remove it to have a better homogenization in the next step. We remove the air, mean we remove oxygen. When we remove oxygen, then we have better oxidative stability of the products. And when we do removal of the air, we also remove some off flavors to have a better, more homogeneous flavor of the final products. And then the next step is homogenization. Homogenization is what? We have to use a homogenizer. In chapter 6, we already discussed. We use the homogenizer to reduce the size of fat globules, increase the surface of the fat globule, but reduce the size to improve the emulsion stability, to prevent the creaming. Okay, prevent the separation of cream layers, separation of fat globules. And this is the main function. But however, we already discussed in this part that when we do homogenization, the original MFGM membrane now is not enough to cover the new membrane, right? So we should have other new surface active material to cover. And the new surface active material to cover is actually casein micelle. Casein will cover the new fat globules. And then when we make yogurt, casein micelle coagulate, and the casein outside will coagulate with the casein of the surface of the new fat globule, and then by that the network becomes stronger because you see the fat globules now are linked into the network because the casein here can coagulate with the casein outside. So fat globules are more integrated in the network, so we have better firmness, better stability, and texture of body of the yogurt. And the next step is heat treatment. Heat treatment here. Do we need to sterilize? No. In making yogurt, the next step we add starter coater. So we don't need to sterilize here, but we just pasteurize. Okay, pasteurization is applied for the heat treatment, but not a normal one, but a high pasteurization. We apply high. Why high? But first we answer the question, why pasteurization first? We already discussed this in chapter 6 as well. We do pasteurization to destroy pathogenic and spoilage microorganisms. When we destroy pathogenic microorganisms, we make a safe products, right? We destroy spoilage microorganism means that we can extend the shelf life. Okay, so we destroy a certain number of microorganisms to help the lactic acid bacteria to grow. Because when we reduce the number of undesired microorganisms, then we give a good chance or we give favorable condition for lactic acid bacteria to grow. And when we do high pasteurization, we also release some component that help the lactic acid bacteria to grow faster. Not only that we reduce the number of undesirable microorganisms, but we may release some component that help stimulate the growth of lactic acid bacteria. Now, we already answered the question why pasteurization. Now we answer the question why high? Why high? Why not normal, but why high? Higher than normal. We already know that with heat treatment, whey protein will be denatured. Caseins are stable against pasteurization, but whey proteins are denatured because they are sensitive to heat. When they are denatured, they will form complexes with kappa casein. Beta-lactoglobulin will form complexes with kappa casein with another beta-lactoglobulin or with an alpha-lactalbumin and so on. So they form kind of complicated complexes, importantly between whey proteins and casein, right? And then if we look back here, if the whey protein are not denatured, they are not coagulated at pi values. We already discussed this, right, in chapter 3. But now they are denatured, they form complexes with casein, with kappa casein. And then when casein coagulate, they also will coagulate together with casein, right? When they are soluble outside, they are not coagulated, but now they are unfolded and they form complexes with casein. Casein precipitate or coagulate, they coagulate together with casein. So they integrate better in the network. And then we know that whey protein have high water holding capacity. They hold water very well. So here they hold the weight. Weight means water, right? They hold the weight inside in the space very well. They hold the weight very well. Then we have less weight off. or less syneresis that we mentioned from the beginning. And everything is linked together better means that you have a better texture, better and structure of the product. And then in making yogurt, there is some step they also add what sweetener, some sugar for example, to improve the taste. They may add some stabilizer to improve the textures, emulsifier or add some fruit mixes, flavor and so on to diversify the products. Now we look at the illustration. We start with milk. Milk is pumped into a Blake heat exchanger. Now we increase the temperature here, and then this is an evaporator. Number 3, evaporator to remove part of water to increase the dry matter content, means to increase the amount of caseins, right? And then after that, homogenization to improve the cream stability, the emulsion stability, to improve the texture and so on we already explained. And then we bring back to the Blake exchanger to increase the temperature to the pasteurization temperature, high pasteurization actually. And then after a period of time of holding, now the milk is bring back here to reduce the temperature, and now the temperature here now is ready for the next step. The milk now here is ready for the next step. Here they use what evaporation to standardize the dry matter content. But the other simpler method is just to add with milk powder or milk concentrate.